Welcome back. So how did the body scan go? What was it like to sit there and try to feel your heartbeat and to try to feel everything going on inside? It may have been kind of hard, but that's okay. Keep practicing, it'll get easier. I know that when I first started, I could only feel my heart when I was running up the stairs or something, but now, even when I'm super duper relaxed, I can feel it beating in my chest. So it's a skill you can totally gain and get better at. And it's super important too, because have you ever had this happen to you where you're sitting on the couch and the next thing you know, you are in front of the refrigerator and you're looking at food and you catch yourself there with the door open and you're like, how did I get here? Right? You just, all of a sudden you're there and you don't remember how it happened or why. The reason that happened is because we basically have a foreground channel in our brain and a background channel. So the foreground channel would be like the stuff that's easy to see, that's obvious, your thoughts. It'd be like watching TV. You know, you're staring at it, this is taking up your attention. And the background channel is kind of like having a radio on in the other room somewhere that's faint. And if you pay attention to it, you can hear it back there. You can hear it going along with the TV, but if you weren't trying to pay attention for it, you'd miss it completely. So that foreground channel in your mind, that's where your own voice is. When you talk to yourself, that's foreground. That's the front stuff. So you've got the thoughts there, you've got what you're aware of, usually what you're looking around at. The background channel, that's more feelings and instincts. It's thoughts that don't really have words paired with them. And why am I talking about this background channel? Because that is where the spirit shows up. We are usually looking in the foreground like, okay, tell me something, God. And in the background, he's giving us that still small voice that sometimes is just a feeling, sometimes it's just that pure thought that comes in. And if we're not concentrating on the background, it's easy to miss that. So it's hard already because the spirit's going to come in on the harder to hear channel. But it's extra difficult because Satan knows that's where it shows up. And so he is going to try to distract us. He wants us to be so busy with stuff going on in our heads, so cluttered, that we miss completely that still small voice in the background. His attack is insidious because he tries to distract us up front, but then in the back, he tries to fill that with so much negativity, with worries and doubts, that we don't want to focus on it. We're not in the habit of being tuned into the background channel and being able to hear the spirit because we don't like the other garbage that's back there. When something bad happens, we like to ignore it, right? We like to sweep it under the rug and try to just not think about it. This is why so many people struggle with trauma. The bad thing happens to them. They don't want to face it because it makes them feel horrible, so they ignore it and it just sits there and it gets worse. It's like putting moldy leftovers to the back of the fridge because you don't want to take it out and clean the Tupperware. I've done that before, like, I'll deal with that later. If you pull it out and open the lid, it's gross, ew. But you have to go through that ew process to be able to clean it out. But if you just leave it in the back, it'll just grow more mold and get nastier and nastier. So he attacks us in that way. But then he also attacks us culturally on the level of our beliefs. This one's messed up too, because in our culture, especially with boys, we teach them, boys don't cry. You know, be a man, suck it up. We like the tough guy thing. We like the military type that can take the hit and not show any weakness. We think it's strength to be able to hold in our feelings, to be able to deny our feelings. That's messed up. That causes so many problems. This is why we have such a problem in America with veterans and PTSD, because they think they have to be strong and not show emotions. So they hold it inside and they can't handle it. The background channel is so full of things that they don't want to think about that they have to really try to distract themselves. And rates of alcoholism are so out of control, drug use, any kind of addiction, to try to cover up the stuff that we don't want to feel. And you don't have to be a veteran to have experienced that. But if we let that go long enough, if we have all that stuff back there, it gets overwhelming. And that's part of the reason people commit suicide. They have ignored that stuff. They've tried to push it back and distract so long that it just gets to a point where it breaks them and they can't do it anymore. As a therapist, I got to tell you, so many of my clients are in their midlife or beyond, and they've come to therapy for the first time in their lives because they have faced a crisis that they can't solve. They have faced something that has been building up for so many years that finally the last straw breaks their back. So in order for us to get good at hearing God, we're going to have to get good at listening to the background channel. And that means courageously facing our emotions, being cool with what's there, being able to notice it and feel it and take care of it as it needs to be taken care of and move on. Tuning in can be hard. It's hard because there's so much stuff back there we don't want to notice. It's just like me with Raisin Bran. Stay with me on this. I love Raisin Bran. It's delicious. It's like one of my favorite cereals. But it gives me heartburn. It's just kind of a low-grade heartburn. I would eat it and I'd feel kind of crappy for a couple hours afterwards. And I'd just try to ignore it and stuff that away. When I really started tuning into my body, I was like, hey, wait a minute. When I eat this makes me feel bad. When I eat vegetables or have a green smoothie for breakfast, I feel better. Weird, right? So look at what happens. Now that's just Raisin Bran, but think about all the rest of the stuff. Oh man, pizza. I used to go to my friend's house every Thursday night and we would have pizza frequently. We'd usually be getting something for dinner that wasn't very healthy, and I would eat so much of it that I just ached inside. I just felt so bloated and full, and it was miserable. And then I would try to kind of distract that by eating sugar that wasn't as filling for the rest of the night. So do you see what's happening here? When you eat certain foods that aren't good for you, it makes you feel crappy. You don't want to feel that, so you keep trying to distract yourself. Did I just teach you that your spirituality can be tied to what you eat? If Satan can get you eating junk food, or just life and habits and the delicious flavor can get you addicted to that stuff, you're not going to want to tune into the background channel. You're going to want to be less aware of yourself. You're going to tune out. Satan is trying to disconnect you from your own body, to disconnect your awareness. So get yourself into the habit of paying attention to what you're feeling and thinking. Not just when you're doing body awareness exercises, but throughout the day. Become aware of what you feel, and whatever it is, even if it's unpleasant, just kind of go, okay, this is here now. That's all right. And it'll usually pass. And if it doesn't, do something about it. Journal about it, see a therapist, talk to a friend, whatever. Your emotions are not something to be afraid of. They're just passing physiological states. And if you can approach them with a sense of, all right, you're going to have power over them. You're going to be able to control them. When you are able to be aware of your emotions and control them, everything gets better. If you find yourself yelling at your kids and you feel horrible about it, it's because your emotions are there and you're not doing something about it. Being more aware of yourself, being aware of your emotions, that's going to help you be a better parent. It's going to help you be a better romantic partner. Because when you're in a fight with your spouse, you're being acted on by those emotions in the background channel. They're just causing you instinctually to fight and be defensive, just like your brain causes you to get up and check the refrigerator. So if you're aware of that, you can stop the fight in progress. This is going to help you lose weight. This is going to help you with diet goals. Because when you're aware of what's going on, you can stop it. You know one of the other benefits you're going to get? Let me tell you what happened to me. I stopped getting sick. I used to get sick like every Christmas, every Thanksgiving. It was miserable. And I would always have the warning sign that the night before, usually 8 p.m., I would feel some scratchiness in my throat. And that's how I knew. It was like, oh no. Because when I get sick, I go for it all the way. My body is usually sick for like 2 weeks. I have a fever, like 12 days straight. And it's terrible. And I thought, my early warning sign isn't early enough to stop it, because no matter what I did at that point, if I went right to bed or if I took all the vitamin C in the world, which doesn't work by the way, it just didn't have any effect on me. So as I became more aware of my body and as I got better at paying attention to myself, I noticed one day, I was at a seminar, and normally during the day I have plenty of energy, but that day I was so tired. I was just sleepy. I wanted to put my head down and just take a nap on my lap. And I just pushed through, powered through it. And the next day, I got the throat tickle at 8 p.m. and got sick. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, was that an indication that I was getting sick? So the next time I started to feel sleepy during the day, I was like, hey, this might be me getting sick. Okay, I better take a nap and get feeling better. So I did. I went upstairs. I didn't want to. I had a busy day, but I took like a 30-minute nap. And when I woke up, I felt refreshed and so much better. And the next day, no sickness. And every time since then that I have felt my body feeling run down and tired, I've taken a nap and I've avoided getting sick. So I've saved myself weeks of misery, of having a fever, of lost productivity, because I learned to be more aware of my body. The pros outweigh the cons here. You can't really be self-aware. So I'm going to read you a quote now, and this comes from the David O. McKay manual that was used one year in church for Sunday school. It's a great thing to be responsive to the whisperings of the Spirit, and we know that when these whisperings come, it is a gift and our privilege to have them. They come when we are relaxed and not under pressure of appointments. Then President McKay said that the point he had in mind was that when we are relaxed in a private room, we are more susceptible to those things. That so far as he was concerned, his best thoughts came after he gets up in the morning and is relaxed and thinking about the duties of the day. That impressions come as clearly as if he were to hear a voice, and those impressions are right. If we are worried about something or upset in our feelings, the inspiration does not come. If we so live that our minds are free from worry, and our conscience clear, and our feelings are right towards one another, the operation of the Spirit of the Lord upon our spirit is as real as when we pick up the telephone. But when they come, note this: we must be brave enough to take the suggested action. I can testify that works. It's true. This morning, I got up early, I'd gone to bed on time, and my mind was flooded. I had so many little strokes of intelligence coming to me, just constant inspiration. They'd come and I'd write them down, and I'd start writing about them in my journal, and I'd get another one, and I made like a to-do list of things I needed to write about, those little revelations that I received, the inspiration. It was awesome. I learned a lot. I gained a lot of light and knowledge this morning because I was listening, I was tuned in, I was trying to keep the background channel clear, trying to keep the foreground channel clear, and be aware of myself. Your background channel might be receiving messages. You might be getting them the whole time, but you might not be hearing them. And that's because you can be disconnected from yourself. It's kind of like a radio. In order to pick up a station, the radio has to be on. It has to be receiving the radio waves to the receiver. But then if you just turn the volume down, it doesn't really matter. Your body is kind of like the volume knob. It's the speaker on the radio. Turning the volume up, in other words, getting more aware of yourself, being more sensitive to your own emotions, makes it so much easier to hear when God's trying to talk to you. So your body is part of your revelation apparatus. You've got your spirit and you've got your body. Now, Joseph Smith said something really interesting about that. He said, all things whatsoever God in his infinite wisdom has seen fit and proper to reveal to us while we're dwelling in mortality, in regards to our mortal bodies, are revealed to us in the abstract, meaning separate, and independent of the affinity of this mortal tabernacle, but are revealed to our spirits precisely as though we had no bodies at all. So that's interesting. When we receive revelation, it comes right to our spirit, independent of our bodies. But since we're connected, since you're a spirit and a body, making you a living soul, the revelation comes from the spirit and then is filtered through your flesh. So it's going to show up in your body and there's going to be certain physical reactions. It's important to remember that we're dual beings, that there's the spirit which comes from heaven. There's the body from the earth. They're joined together. And so we have our spirit, which provides our consciousness, which is the essence of who we are. And our body with a brain that allows us to be conscious. If you just have a spirit inside of a body without the brain working, there's no consciousness there. But when the spirit leaves the body, the brain's not conscious anymore. So there's the spirit and the brain, and they meet in the mind. Your mind is the meeting place of heaven and earth. So you have these two sources of input to be aware of. You have information coming from the spirit, and you have information coming from your body. So it's kind of like a confluence of two rivers. Spiritual input on the one hand, and then the physical input on the other. And they come in and they get mixed together, and telling them apart can be kind of a challenge. Now, knowing that you have physical inputs and spiritual inputs to the same place into the mind, that's going to be the hottest battlefront. That's where Satan is going to come after you. That is where hell is going to rage. The fight for your soul is fought in your mind. Powers of darkness are going to come at you with all of the thoughts and the emotions to distract you, to demoralize you. They're going to come at you with depression and anxiety, with despair. They're going to try to get you to believe that you can't win. They're going to come after you on the level of your beliefs. In this conflict, the warriors, they don't fight with swords. They fight with words. They fight with positive emotions. They fight the darkness with cheer, with hope, with words of comfort and peace. So I invite you to raise your level of awareness. Start paying more attention to what's going on in your mind, because some of it is coming from your body, some of it's coming from your spirit, and some of the stuff that Satan and his friends are telling your spirit is not true, and it's not helpful. And all those negative thoughts that you might have, they're not yours, not all of them. And knowing that there is this conflict raging, we had better know what's us, what's God, and what's the devil. We need to be able to differentiate between those voices. And the reason that we say, I don't know, is that God or was that my own mind? Because we haven't spent enough time getting to know ourselves, being in tune with us, really understanding all the stuff that's going on inside. It's kind of like an airport terminal. You've got all these flights coming in from different places, different people, different places. They come into the same terminal, they mix all together, they get jumbled. They all go down the escalator together. So if you're sitting there at the bottom of the escalator next to the baggage claim, and you're trying to tell, like, well, what flight did that person come off of? What about them? They look different. It can be hard to tell. But if you raise your level of awareness, you'll start to notice patterns, and you'll start to have an understanding of how to tell those things apart. So it won't be so confusing. So you can reasonably go, okay, this thing inside of me, that definitely came from the spirit. This one was just definitely my thought. You get better at that as you pay attention to your own inner experience. In order to be able to sort through all that, it really helps to have stillness. If you can take all that clutter of the foreground channel in your brain in the front and just shut that down, so that there's peace and serenity in your mind. When you've got that stillness, you have more of an ability to pay attention to the background channel and to tell where the revelation is coming from and what your own emotion is. So that's a huge step. First, stillness. Then you have the ability to be connected to God more. If you're trying to pray and connect and receive revelation without getting to stillness first, then I know why you're frustrated. It's difficult. It's kind of like a Where's Waldo book. You have all of this jumbly mess, all these people. Is that Waldo? Oh, there's some stripes. No, that's not him. Difference between that one and Where's Waldo for Dummies. So much easier to find him when you clear away all the clutter and come to a place of stillness first. But we don't do that. We don't go for stillness first. Usually we just jump right in and start praying. And we got to take that step first, because what we're doing is the equivalent of being at a crazy party. Let's say you're having a party at your house. You've got a DJ there. There's 7-foot speakers and thousands of people, and they're all making noise and dancing, and your phone rings. Now, if you pull that out and try to listen, you're going to be really frustrated. It's going to be like, what? I'm sorry. No, I can't hear you. And if we're trying to have this connection, this conversation with all the clutter around, it's easy to fall into this frustration where we're like, no, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, just call me back later. And we hang up. So it's easy for us to start blaming God for not talking louder. Like, it's noisy in here, it's a party, can't he tell? Why doesn't he just speak louder? Instead of taking responsibility for ourselves and kicking the party out so that we can have that clarity and stillness to connect with God. Blame is so dangerous when you're giving up your responsibility, when you're giving up your agency, because if you do that, you start to feel more and more disconnected from God, more and more powerless, and you stop moving forward in your life. And things start to just be motions. You're just going through the motions. You're not getting the rewards. You're feeling kind of stagnant. And then you can fall into depression. You can fall into a real slump. And why? Stagnation and depression, how does that start? With blame, with giving up our power. We've got to start with stillness before we connect. Otherwise, it's like, you know, when you try to have a conversation with somebody and like they're texting on their phone and they're like, yeah, oh, look at that, yeah. You don't really feel connected to them. You know that their attention is elsewhere. They're not really totally with you. We kind of do that to God, and I'm sure he doesn't love it. It's not very respectful when we're like, dear Heavenly Father, I definitely need pizza for dinner. Yeah, sorry, anyway, like, you know, he's not angry at us, so don't think that he's mean or disappointed, but he's probably like, okay, try to focus more. We got to connect here. I got important things to tell you. And when you can have that connection with God, that is the source of your sense of identity. You really come to know who you are when you get to know him. It's the source of joy. It's the source of growth and progress and confidence. Connection is the source of everything. And so if you haven't been fully getting that, it's like you've been going to work and not getting your paycheck. Being fully connected brings the blessings. It's kind of like using a magnifying glass to try to burn paper. If you move that magnifying glass all over the place, it's not going to work. You have to hold it steady until it starts to burn. And your concentration is just like that. If you can hold your concentration steady in the stillness, you can get the connection that you've been missing, that you are dying for, that you just feel shriveled up, and that would be the water to quench your thirst. Connection is everything. So before you make that phone call to God, make sure you kick all the house guests out. Now, in real life, if the party's out of control and you can't stop it, you call the cops over and they clear everything out. But what do you do when your brain's messed up like that? You still got to call the cops, and that cop is your concentration. Now, I know when your brain is out of control, it feels like you have no control, right? It feels like there's nothing you can do. It's just going to do its own thing. It's its own little world, and you have no control over that. But this is kind of like when you see the parents in the grocery store where their kid throws a tantrum and they relent. They finally like, all right, and they give them the candy bar. And then the kid shuts up. And the parents, they have like this defeated, dejected look on their face, and they wonder like, why can't I control my kids? Well, it's because you've given away your power. If you give in to the tantrum, I know it's bad, I know it's hard, but if you give in to the tantrum, you lose your power as the authority figure. And if you don't stand up and say, brain, shut up, listen to me, I'm in charge here, it's going to continue to be unruly. Your brain is like a wild stallion, and you've got to break it. That's going to take time. That's not just going to happen once and you're going to be done. You're going to have to practice at this to get good. That the cop of your concentration to throw those party guests out, right now he might be like a 70-year-old mall cop who's like, excuse me, could you keep it down a little bit, please? Like, that's not going to shut up the party. You got to give them some training. You got to turn your concentration into a SWAT team with riot gear so they can rush in there and throw in the tear gas and throw people out the windows. You can get that strong. You can get to that point, but it's going to take some work. Brigham Young said, Do you know that it is your privilege so to live that your minds may be all the time perfectly within your control? You are in control of your mind. I don't want you to miss how vital that is to know. Understanding that you're in control of your brain, not the other way around, changes everything. Because if you forget that, you turn into a helpless victim. You're like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And fine, there's nothing you can do about it. You're the one who got the control. So if you're saying I don't have control, then you're not going to have any. You get to choose. Remember, you're a spirit. You happen to be driving this meat-coated skeleton, but you're a spirit. You're the one in control. The body is subordinate. You're supposed to subject it. You're supposed to teach it and to train it. And yes, that's probably going to take 80 years, which is why you're going to live somewhere around that length. It takes a lot of work, but you got to start practicing. You can't give up. You can't say that you don't have the power. Just say, I can't do that yet, but I'm working on it. You've got to be like my old dog I had when I was a kid. It's a German Shepherd named Bear. And we would chain him up in the backyard, and we would use like the biggest chains that you can get from the store. Like, you know, the ones with the metal's like as thick as a pencil? These were huge chains. And Bear would strain against them and run against it. And he would break out every couple of months. He broke his chain and he'd run down to the elementary school to play with the kids. And they were terrified because there comes this German Shepherd. He didn't give up. He didn't think that chain had any control over him. Now contrast that to elephants in the circus, where when they're a baby, they chain them down to the ground and the elephant struggles against the chain, and no matter what he does, he can't break it. And so the elephant grows and gets bigger and stronger, and now, you know, that's really not enough to hold him in. They could probably break that if they tried. But they think they're helpless. And so they are. Now, why am I spending so much time concentrating on this? As I said earlier, the battle for your mind is the battle for your soul. It's all going to be fought there, and they are coming at you at the level of your beliefs. Satan's tools, in opposition to faith and hope, are despair and inactivity. If he can get you to do nothing or to think that you can't do anything anyway, it's like doing nothing at all. If he can convince you to fill yourself with hopelessness, that nothing's going to work, that you can't change, you will never act in faith. You will never try, and you will never get the results. He doesn't have to get you to sin in order to win. He doesn't have to turn you into a terrible person. All he has to do is take away your hope. So I want you to be very aware that your beliefs matter. The things going through your head matter. Please find any negative belief, any belief that fills you with a sense of darkness, with a sense of hopelessness. You've got to get rid of that. Just dump it. Dump it somewhere. Do something to get rid of it, because it is not helping you. And in fact, that's what's holding you back from God more than a lot of other factors. Just like we talked about in video 1, the view you have of God, the beliefs that you have about Him dictate how you think and act and feel towards Him. If you believe He's angry and He hates you, you're not going to reach out. You're not going to want to connect with Him. So, oh boy, are you getting the message here? Become aware of your beliefs, choose them deliberately, and really run them through the filter, because you don't want to let just anything in there. You don't want to take advice from Satan's little helpers, because they're going to make you miserable. So let me just remind you, here are the steps. First, stillness, then connection. And you get the connection, you've got all the focus, all the concentration on that in the presence of quiet stillness. You've got to start there though. Your brain is like a muscle. You can make it stronger. You can work it out, and you can grow in concentration. And that's been proven by brain scans. When you look at the brain of a cabbie in London who's had to memorize all of the streets, their hippocampus, way back there, like right there, where they store their maps of the world, that's huge. It's like thick with connections, much cooler than your hippocampus or my hippocampus. Same thing when they look at violinists. The part of the brain that controls the left hand, or whatever hand they're using on the fretboard, it is beefed up. The only difference between you and a concert violinist is they have more brain connections. And if you had those same brain connections, you'd be able to play the violin. Now, how did they get them? They practiced practicing something makes you get better at it. And why do you get better at it? It's not magic. It's because you're creating new connections in your brain. Whatever you focus on will grow. Whatever you focus on, you'll get better at. If you want to be a professional worrywart, you're going to be good at that. If you think about depressing stuff all day, you are going to be like professionally sad and hopeless as a person. You can focus on playing the violin, and you can focus on living in a state of peace and serenity, a state where you can connect with God instantly. That's worth doing. That's worth some practice. I can tell you, it's definitely worth some practice. Now, deliberately shaping and controlling your mind and rewiring it to be the coolest brain it can be, it's not just a good idea. It's kind of a commandment. Brigham Young said, "Let the people study to bring their thinking or reflecting faculties into subjection." Subjection, in other words, you are the boss and you tell your brain what to do. If you can't subject your mind, you're not really subjecting your soul. You're not growing as a person. You're not getting rid of the natural man and putting all the worldly, anger and jealousy and lust behind you. This is the process of perfecting your soul, learning to concentrate and change your brain. That's how it's physically happening. So this is super tied into like your whole purpose on earth, to learn and grow as a child of God. One more quote from Brigham Young. "The greatest mystery a man ever learned is to know how to control the human mind and bring every faculty and the power of the same in subjection to Jesus Christ. This is the greatest mystery that we have to learn while in these tabernacles of clay." So that's our quest. Do you see how this is all tied together? Being connected to God allows Him to give you light and knowledge and power. He gives you guidance of how to guide your life, where to go and what to do. He's helping you to grow into the person that you need to be, the person that you're going to be happy being. All right, so concentration is the power by which you change the brain. We know that we can control our brains with enough practice, and we know that Brigham Young told us we're supposed to study and how to do that. So how do we study that? How do we take our brain to the gym to work it out and beef it up and mush that mush into whatever we want it to be? Well, the answer is meditation. Well, wait a minute, Kenneth. Isn't that meditation hippie stuff? Isn't this new age woo-woo weirdo stuff that cults do to control people's minds? Some people use good things for bad purposes, yes. But meditation doesn't have to be religious. Meditation can be a purely mental practice. Meditation is simple. It is nothing more than the act of focusing your mind on the present moment, on the sensations that you're experiencing. That's it. You pick an anchor point in your body, like your heart beating, or the sensation of peace. You just focus on it. And as thoughts come in, you just go, okay, I see you there, thanks. Oh, there's an emotion, worrying about something. Okay, thanks for stopping by, going back to my anchor point. Constantly, every time your mind wanders, bring it back. It's like a dog on a leash, it's going to be going every direction and dragging you around. You're just like, nope, I'm in control here. This way, we're going this way, heel, and you always come back. You're training yourself to hold your mind steady and concentrate. And that can be difficult. Being able to just think not even think one thought, because you're not thinking when you're meditating, you're just being aware. But being able to do that and to keep your mind focused on that one thing, if you can go for 5 seconds right now, that's pretty impressive. It takes a lot of work. I dare you to try to go for 30 seconds without thinking about something. And that includes thinking about how well you're doing getting to the 30 seconds. But to just be uninterrupted without losing your focus, being calm and centered. So meditation is nothing more than bringing the mind back to focused and calm and centered, clearing out the clutter of the brain, and just being in the moment. You don't need religion for meditation. You don't need chakras. You don't need sitting cross-legged and saying Om. Those are just things added onto it. Meditation is just a psychological process, and it's a powerful one too. Now, Satan knows that if you can calm your mind down, he loses power. If you can calm your mind down, you can connect with God. He doesn't want that to happen. So of course, he's going to have a huge smear campaign for meditation. He's going to have wacky cults do it where there's mind control and other stuff going on. And then when people hear meditation, they're like, oh, that's weird, like cults and hippies, and oh, I don't like that. You got to dump your old baggage. Dump your old associations because they're not helping. Learning to meditate will change your life, and I know that because it's changed mine. So when it comes to dumping your old baggage, when it comes to accepting truth, I want you to consider, I know I said I wouldn't, but one more quote from Brigham Young. I want to say to my friends that we believe in all good. If you can find a truth in heaven, earth, or hell, it belongs to our doctrine. We believe it, it is ours, we claim it. If something's good, accept it. Take the good part, throw away the bad part. We do a lot of baby tossing when we throw out the bathwater. So if you can find something good, hold on to that and dump the rest. You don't have to have all the associations. All right, so meditation's awesome. I hope you get the point. Let me tell you what happened my first time when I meditated. I went to a friend's house and they suggested we try it, and I was like, all right. So I sat down and she started guiding me through it. And it was like someone was standing over me with a bucket of peace and they just dumped it on my head and it washed through my whole system. It's like fire, it's electricity of like, whoa. And I thought to myself in that moment, maybe this isn't hippie nonsense. Maybe there's something to this. It allowed me to have such a powerful connection with God because it broke down all those internal walls that had been keeping me from Him. I had all those walls, I had all that distraction, I had a mind that wasn't focused. It's like I mentioned before, your mind is like a puppy going for a walk. When you take that puppy out for the first time, it wants to sniff everything. It's all over the place and you're constantly tugging on the leash and trying to get it back focused on walking straight ahead. It's so distractible. And our brains do the same thing. We're always running off to the past, fretting about what happened, having regrets, and then we worry about the future, thinking about the fears and anxieties we have. We're always in the past or the present, experiencing depression, anxiety, and we're never just in the moment where peace exists. Being in the moment is so powerful to get rid of those feelings, to feel focused. Because in the moment, there's no memories, there's no worries, there's just you. And that silence is an incredible thing. When you can call your mind to order, your life gets better. When was the last time you tried that? When was the last time you called your mind to order? So meditation is something I'm going to teach you in the next video. But before we do that, I just wanted to tell you some of the benefits that you're going to get from this. When you meditate, it takes the part of your brain that feels fear. It's the amygdala. It's kind of back here. It's in the primitive area. It's responsible for fear, and when you see something new and novel and you're like, oh, what's that? This is a thing that freaks out when you have anxiety. And meditators have their amygdala shrink. Literally shrink. Like in actual reality, the part of your brain that feels worry gets smaller. Your frontal lobes, which are responsible for wisdom and control and judgment, those beef up. You get more connections, thicker gray matter in there. Meditation reduces your stress level, and they found that the telomeres on the ends of your DNA, it's kind of like, is it on DNA, chromosomes? I can't remember. Anyway, it's the thing that protects your genes from being damaged. It's kind of like the little plastic coverings that go on your shoelaces from keeping them from unraveling. You only have a certain number of telomeres, and once you run out, you kind of die. So meditation like preserves those so they don't wear off. Stress is a huge driver of disease. So you reduce your stress, it's going to help with every kind of disease there is. Meditators also experience deeper sleep, higher quality sleep. How would you like that? Would you be able to sleep deeper and get more out of that? And after 2 months practice in one study, it was found that meditators had greater positive affect. They were just happier. Meditation makes you happy. Like I mentioned earlier, when you can be aware of yourself, you don't eat as much. You're aware of the emotional eating habits. So it's going to help you with your diet. I don't know, you have such awareness in the moment that you realize new things. Like sometimes I'd eat Little Debbie stuff, and before it was just like, oh, sugar, blah, blah, blah. When you start meditating, you're aware, you mindfully eat that, and you're like, this is disgusting. How did I like this? And your desire for bad food goes away just because you realize it's low quality. You were eating it for the sugar rush, you weren't eating it for the flavor. And when you eat some deliciously cooked vegetables, you're like, wow, this tastes really good. It's awesome. So starting right now, I want to take you through the first cliff note of connection, you could call it. I have a process. When I'm going to connect with God, I made a checklist. After beating my head against the wall so many times and struggling to connect, I would learn these little things that I needed to put in to my process of how to connect with Him. And I finally distilled all those things and put them in order where I'm like, okay, first do this, cool, ready, do that, do that, do that. And then going through that list enables me to have powerful connection with Him. So we have talked about that already today. Stillness. That is your first cliff note of connection. Get your mind to stillness. When you're sitting down to pray, get ready first. You can do a little meditation. So we'll come back to this as the videos go on, and we'll add to it so you can have this easy reference guide. Because I know this is a lot. I'm pouring a lot out here, and I want to help you to try to keep it organized in your mind. But stillness precedes connection. So that's the end of the video. We went over a lot today, but you can remember the highlights, just that you can control your brain. You have the ability to learn how to do that, and as you do and you create stillness, you have the ability to connect. It's kind of like, have you ever been outside at night when it's snowing? Everything is so silent. And you stand there and you just notice that there's nothing. There's just the flakes falling and total silence. That sense of inner stillness. That's what you can get with meditation, aside from all the other benefits. You're also going to be able to identify the voice of God in that silence. Are you excited to get started? I hope so. Go to the next video and let's start your practice.